We have all heard about the Mayas, but how many of us know why they no longer exist? The beginning of the end started in 720 AD Copan, western Honduras. Stone pyramids pushed through jungle canopy at one of the classic Maya's greatest capitals. For centuries, it mastered art, astronomy, and power across the southeast frontier, but its roots run older than stone. Before 1000 BC, these valleys held farming villages growing maize. And now, DNA is revealing why this kingdom rose fast and why it really fell. But what happened to those early farmers? How did a scattering of villages become a kingdom? And when that kingdom collapsed, what did the DNA of its people reveal about survival, migration, and the forces that built and destroyed classic Maya power? By 426 or 427 AD, something changed at Copan. A new dynasty was founded. Not by a local chief rising through the ranks, but by an outsider. His name was Kanishyax Mo, recorded in the hieroglyphic inscriptions that still cover Copan's monuments. Scholars translate his name as Great Son First Quetzal Makor, a title dripping with cosmic authority and divine legitimacy. Who was this man? Where did he come from? The inscriptions don't tell us, but they make clear that he inaugurated something unprecedented. A royal line that would last nearly 400 years and span 16 rulers. Under these kings, Copan became a powerhouse. Art flourished. The famous hieroglyphic stairway, the longest ancient text in the Americas, was carved to chronicle the dynasty's achievements. Astronomers tracked celestial cycles with stunning precision. Trade networks stretched across Mesoamerica, bringing jade, obsidian, cacao, feathers, and exotic goods from hundreds of miles away. But by about 820 AD, construction at Copan halts. The monuments fall silent. No more inscriptions. No more kings. The polity weakens and fragments. The city doesn't vanish overnight, but the centralized power that defined the classic period crumbles. For centuries, archaeologists have asked, why? What brought down a civilization that had thrived for 400 years? Drought? War? Internal collapse? All of the above? Now, for the first time, ancient DNA is giving us answers written in the bones themselves. A new study from Trinity College Dublin analysed 7 classic period burials from Copan, individuals who lived and died during the height of the city's power. These weren't random graves. They were carefully selected to represent different social strata, different burial contexts, different moments in Copan's trajectory. 2 of them were men, buried in ways that reveal status and circumstance. CPM 13, found in an elite tomb outside the Acropolis, the royal heart of the city. His burial included jade ornaments, finely crafted pottery, the trappings of wealth and power. This was someone important, someone connected to the ruling apparatus. CPM 12 was buried nearby, but his context was starkly different. A sacrificial-style burial, no grave goods, no ceremony. The positioning and treatment suggested a violent end, perhaps a captive, perhaps a ritual offering. 2 men, buried close in space but worlds apart in status. Genetically, though, they shared something significant. Both carried Y chromosome lineage Q1b, a marker common across indigenous populations in the Americas. It's a lineage that traces back to the first people who crossed into the Americas over 15,000 years ago, moving south from Beringia, the land bridge that once connected Siberia to Alaska. But here's the twist: despite sharing that deep ancestral marker, CPM 30 and CPM 12 were not close kin. They weren't brothers, not father and son, not even cousins. They came from different family lines. The shared Y chromosome just meant they both descended, through their male ancestors, from the same ancient founding population. The other 5 individuals told a more complex story. 3 women, 2 men, and their maternal lineages, traced through mitochondrial DNA, showed diversity. Haplogroups A2 and C1, both Pan-American lineages, but representing different branches of the maternal family tree. These haplogroups spread across the continents thousands of years ago, and their presence at Copan reflects that deep heritage. But when researchers compared the full genomes of all 7 individuals to ancient and modern datasets from across Mesoamerica, something remarkable emerged. Something that reshaped our understanding of Maya population history. Deep genetic continuity. A direct, unbroken line linking Copan's people to the broader Maya region, stretching back at least to the late Archaic period, roughly 5600 to 3700 BC. 7,000 years of people living in this region, farming, building communities, speaking related languages, maintaining cultural and biological ties across time. The continuity doesn't stop in the classic period, it extends forward. The genome signatures at Copan connect to later Maya sites like Chichen Itza in Yucatan and communities in Campeche. And most strikingly, they connect to today's Maya, the roughly 7 million people living across Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras who maintain Maya languages and cultural identities. This is profound. It means the Maya aren't a lost civilization. They didn't vanish. They're still here. And the genetic data proves unbroken continuity from the deep past to the present. Yet buried within that stability was unexpected outside DNA. Alongside the continuity, researchers detected something else in the Copan genomes. Specifically, an influx of highland Mexican ancestry, likely from the Oaxaca region, possibly connected to the Zapotec cultural sphere or other Central Mexican groups. This admixture begins appearing in the genetic record during the early to Middle Classic period, roughly 250 to 5050 AD, right around the time Kinich Yaxcoxmo was founding his dynasty. At Copan, this highland Mexican ancestry constitutes about 6% of the genome. Not a huge proportion, but significant. Detectable. Meaningful. What does it mean? It fits perfectly with what archaeologists have long suspected from material culture. Copan had wide-ranging trade and political ties. Connections to the Guatemalan highlands. Ties to Teotihuacan, the massive central Mexican metropolis that dominated Mesoamerica in the early Classic period. Exchange of goods, ideas, people. An isotopic analysis of bones supports this. Many elites at Copan, individuals buried with wealth and status markers, were non-local. Their tooth enamel, which forms in childhood and locks in the chemical signature of the water and food consumed, doesn't match the Copan region. They grew up somewhere else and migrated to the city later in life. Was Kinich Yaxcoxmo himself one of these outsiders? The genetic data suggests it's possible. Perhaps he came from the highlands, bringing Mexican connections, foreign prestige, and new political strategies that allowed him to seize power and establish a dynasty. The genetic picture isn't just about origins, it's about demographics, population size, growth, and collapse. And here, the data gets even more revealing. Using a technique called IBD, identity by descent, researchers can infer historical population sizes from patterns of shared genetic segments. The more recent a common ancestor, the longer the shared segments. By analysing these patterns across the Copan genomes, they reconstructed the city's demographic trajectory. What they found was stunning, strong, classic period growth. The effective population size, a measure of the breeding population, climbed to around 19,000 by approximately 730 AD. That's not the total population of Copan, which would have been larger, but it gives a sense of scale. This was a booming city, growing, thriving. What drove that growth? Almost certainly, maize intensification, agricultural innovation, terracing hillsides, managing water, breeding more productive corn varieties, storing surplus, all the strategies that allow dense urban populations to flourish. But growth has a cost. By about 750 AD, the demographic data shows a sharp decline, not gradual, not gentle, sharp. A population crash that tracks almost perfectly with the political collapse documented in the archaeological record. By 820 AD, construction stops, the dynasty ends, the city fragments. What caused the collapse? The genetic data can't answer that directly, but it points to vulnerability, agricultural strain from dense populations. Copan's success had pushed the carrying capacity of the land to its limits. Any shock, environmental or political, would hit hard. And the shocks came. Severe droughts during the 9th to 11th centuries, documented in cave formations, lake sediments, and tree rings across the Maya lowlands. Water stress, crop failures. Interstate competition among Maya powers made things worse. Cities like Tikal and Calakmul in the Petan lowlands were locked in generations of warfare and rivalry. Alliances shifted, trade routes disrupted, the political landscape fractured, and internally, Copan was straining. Social inequality, visible in the archaeological record, was widening. Compare the lavish tomb of CPM-13, with its jade and fine pottery, to simpler interments. The gap between elite and commoner was growing. Inequality breeds instability. When the droughts hit and the crops failed, the social contract broke. The elites couldn't deliver prosperity. The people lost faith. And the system collapsed, not from outside invasion, but from internal fracture. And those fractures show up not just in ruins, but in the contrast between lives. Between the man buried with jade and the man buried without name or honor. Between those who ate well and those who starved. The broader implications of Copan's genetic story reach far beyond one city. Those Q1b Y chromosome lineages in CPM-13 and CPM-12 echo the initial peopling of the Americas. When the first people crossed from Siberia into Alaska over 15,000 years ago, they carried lineages that would eventually spread from the Arctic to Tierra del Fuego. Huon-B is one of those founding lineages. Its presence at Copan is a reminder that the Maya, like all indigenous Americans, are descendants of those pioneering migrants. The maternal haplogroups A2 and C1 tell the same story, Pan-American markers inherited through maternal lines linking populations across vast distances and deep time. The genetic heritage of the Americas is shared, diverse in detail but unified in origin. And Copan's admixture, that 6% Highland Mexican ancestry, shows that population history isn't simple. People moved, traded, intermarried, genetic boundaries were porous. The Maya weren't isolated. They were connected to the broader Mesoamerican world in complex, dynamic ways. But the study has limitations. 7 individuals is a small sample. Copan's population at its height was in the tens of thousands. 7 genomes can't capture all the variation, all the stories. Future work needs to target more burials, spanning different time periods, different social classes, different parts of the city, and ancient DNA is just the beginning. Epigenetic markers, chemical modifications to DNA that don't change the sequence but affect gene expression, can reveal stress, childhood malnutrition, disease, environmental hardship. Methylation patterns in ancient bones might show how drought impacted health, how inequality translated into bodily stress. Pathogen DNA is another frontier. What diseases circulated at Copan? Did trade routes bring new infections? Can we trace epidemics in the genetic record? Understanding disease ecology could reveal another layer of vulnerability, another factor in collapse. Proteomics, the study of ancient proteins, can extract information even from bones too degraded for DNA sequencing. Proteins are more stable. They last longer. They can tell us about diet, about disease, about biological stress in ways DNA alone cannot. And all of this, combined with more refined archaeological context, could resolve regional and temporal variation within the Maya world. Copan's rise and fall isn't just ancient history. It's a case study in sustainability, in the limits of growth, in the consequences of inequality. The Maya built a brilliant civilization, but they also pushed their environment to the breaking point. When the droughts came, when the crops failed, the system couldn't adapt. That's a lesson worth remembering, because we're facing our own environmental stresses, our own droughts, our own inequality. And the bones of Copan whisper a warning across 13 centuries. Growth without sustainability, power without equity, these are fragile foundations. But there's another lesson in Copan's DNA: resilience, continuity. The Maya didn't vanish. The city collapsed, yes, the dynasty ended, but the people endured. They moved, adapted, survived, and their descendants are still here, still speaking Maya languages, still maintaining cultural traditions, still connected genetically and culturally to their ancestors. That 7,000-year thread of continuity is extraordinary. And when that legacy crumbled, when the last king fell silent and the monuments stopped rising, the people of Copan kept going. They didn't need kings to survive. They had maize, they had the land, they had each other. The collapse of Copan wasn't the end of the Maya, it was a transition, a reorganization. Political centralization gave way to smaller, decentralized communities. The monumental architecture stopped, but life continued. Want to know who the first Americans really were? Click here to watch more. This discovery rewrites everything.